Before we begin, I want you to think of one person, the person you still think about when the world becomes quiet, the person whose name can still change your entire mood in a matter of seconds, the person you told yourself you had moved on from, and yet a song, a place, a certain time of night, or a random memory still pulls you back to them. You miss them. You wonder how they're doing. You replay old conversations in your head and imagine different endings. You ask yourself if they ever think about you too. But what if the person you're grieving no longer exists? Not because they disappeared from this world, but because the version of them you keep holding on to only lives inside your memory. Buddhist wisdom teaches that some of our deepest suffering is not caused by losing people. It is caused by refusing to let go of who they used to be, the future we imagined with them, and the version of ourselves we became beside them. So tonight, I want to invite you into a difficult but life-changing conversation, because perhaps the person you've been trying so desperately to find again was never really them. And perhaps the reason you can't let go is because, hidden beneath all the heartbreak and longing, you have been searching for the part of yourself you lost while loving someone who could not stay. And if you stay with me until the end of this video, you may discover that the peace you've been chasing in someone else's return has been waiting quietly inside you all along. You are not missing them. You are missing who you were with them. One of the hardest truths to accept after losing someone is this: sometimes you are not only grieving the person who left, you are grieving the version of yourself that disappeared when they did. Most people believe they miss another person. They say, "I miss their voice. I miss their smile. I miss the way they understood me." And while that may be true, Buddhist wisdom invites us to look a little deeper. What if the pain you're carrying isn't only about them? What if a part of you is actually mourning the person you used to be when they were in your life? Maybe before everything fell apart, you felt more alive. You woke up with excitement because there was someone you wanted to talk to. You checked your phone and smiled when their name appeared on the screen. Ordinary days felt special because you had someone to share them with. Maybe you laughed more easily back then. Maybe you cared more about how you looked because someone made you feel attractive and wanted. Maybe you believed in the future in a way you no longer do now. You had plans. You imagined birthdays together, trips together, small moments that hadn't even happened yet. You pictured a life that seemed safe and beautiful because you believed they would be part of it. And without realizing it, you started building your identity around that version of life. You became the person who was loved by them, the person who belonged to someone, the person who had finally found what they had been searching for. Then one day everything changed. Maybe they left suddenly. Maybe the relationship slowly faded until it became unrecognizable. Maybe they chose someone else. Maybe life simply pulled both of you in different directions. But whatever happened, it didn't only take them away. It also took away the version of you that existed beside them. Suddenly, mornings felt heavier. The songs you once loved became difficult to listen to. Places that used to bring comfort started bringing pain. You still went through your daily routine. You still showed up for work. You still smiled when people asked if you were okay. But deep inside, something felt missing. You kept thinking, "I don't even recognize myself anymore." And perhaps that was the real heartbreak, because you weren't just grieving the loss of another person, you were grieving the loss of the self who believed life was unfolding exactly as it should. The self who trusted love without fear. The self who made plans without wondering if everything would fall apart. The self who thought, "Maybe this is it. Maybe I've finally found my person." That is why letting go feels so painful. It doesn't feel like releasing a memory. It feels like saying goodbye to the happiest version of yourself. It feels like accepting that the person you once were no longer exists. And that realization can be terrifying, because if that version of you is gone, who are you now? But this is where Buddhist wisdom offers something gentle and powerful. It reminds us that no other human being has the power to create our worth. No one arrives carrying our happiness inside their pocket. No one brings us value that did not already exist within us. The love you gave came from your own heart. The kindness you showed came from your own spirit. The patience, the loyalty, the compassion, the hope, the ability to trust and care deeply, those qualities belonged to you before they entered your life. You simply forgot that they were yours. You handed pieces of yourself away without noticing. You gave another person credit for the light that had always been shining inside you. You told yourself, "They made me special. They made me happy. They completed me." But the truth is, they didn't create those parts of you. They simply helped you see them. And if you could become that version of yourself once, you can become whole again, not by finding another person to replace them, but by returning to yourself, by remembering what you enjoyed before your world became centered around someone else's presence, by laughing again without needing permission from another person's attention, by building a life that feels meaningful because it reflects who you truly are. Healing is not about becoming the person you were before they entered your life. You cannot go backward. Life does not move in reverse. Healing is about becoming someone even stronger, wiser, and more grounded than before. Someone who understands that love is beautiful, but it should never require abandoning yourself. Someone who knows that being chosen by another person is not the same as choosing yourself. Maybe this chapter of your life isn't asking you to fight harder for someone who already walked away. Maybe it isn't asking you to spend years replaying old memories and wondering what you could have done differently. Maybe this chapter is asking something much braver of you. Maybe it is asking you to come home, to return to the parts of yourself you neglected while trying so hard to keep someone else close, to remember your own dreams, to rediscover your own voice, to rebuild a relationship with the person who has been waiting patiently for your attention all along, you, because perhaps the person you miss the most isn't the one who left. Perhaps the person you've truly been longing for is the version of yourself you abandoned in the process of loving them. And maybe, just maybe, the journey of letting go was never about learning how to live without them. Maybe it was always about learning how to find yourself again. The person you miss exists only in memory. There is a painful truth that most people spend years trying to avoid, and it is this: sometimes, the person you miss no longer exists anywhere except inside your own mind. At first, that sounds heartbreaking. You immediately want to say, no, they're still out there. They're still the same person I loved. But are they? Take a moment and think about the version of them you carry in your heart. You remember the way they smiled at you. You remember the jokes they used to tell. You remember the late-night conversations that made you feel seen and understood. You remember the way they looked at you when everything felt simple. You remember the promises they made, the plans you created together, the feeling of believing that this person would be part of your future. These memories feel so real that sometimes it seems as though you could reach out and touch them. But here is the difficult question Buddhist wisdom asks us to consider. When was the last time you actually knew who that person truly was? Not who they were 5 years ago, not who they were before life became complicated, not the version of them you replay in your mind every night before you sleep, but who are they today? The truth is, you don't know, because people change. The person you loved may now think differently. They may have different dreams, different fears, different priorities, and different ways of seeing the world. They may laugh at different things now. They may want different things from life. Even their understanding of love may have changed. And if you are honest with yourself, the same is true for you. You are not the exact same person you were back then either. You have experienced pain that changed you. You have learned lessons you once knew nothing about. You have cried in ways your younger self could never imagine. You have survived days you thought would break you. You have become softer in some places and stronger in others. Life has shaped you. Time has shaped you. Suffering has shaped you. So why do we continue acting as though people remain frozen exactly as they once were? Because memory does something very strange. Memory takes moving people and turns them into photographs. It captures a single moment and whispers, "This is who they are." It takes a living, changing human being and preserves them in the version that feels safest to remember, the version before disappointment, the version before distance, the version before reality became too painful to accept, and this is where suffering quietly begins. Buddha taught that everything in existence is impermanent. Nothing stays exactly the same. A flower blooms, and then it fades. The seasons arrive and disappear. Children grow into adults. Rivers reshape the land. Even mountains slowly change with time. Life itself is movement. Everything is constantly becoming something new, yet the human mind desperately wants permanence. We want people to stay exactly as they were when they made us feel loved. We want relationships to remain untouched by time. We want beautiful moments to last forever. And when reality refuses to obey our wishes, we suffer, not because change is wrong, but because we fight against what change naturally brings. Maybe the person you miss was real. Maybe the love you shared was real. Maybe those moments truly mattered, but they belong to a specific chapter of life, a chapter that has already ended. And there is a difference between honoring a chapter and trying to live inside it forever. Many people spend years waiting for an old version of someone to come back. They wait for the person who used to call every morning, the person who once apologized after arguments, the person who made them feel important, the person who said, "I will never leave." But sometimes, the person you are waiting for no longer exists. Not because they became bad, not because you imagined everything, but because life continued, people evolved, and time moved forward. One of the deepest forms of suffering is trying to have a relationship with who someone used to be while refusing to accept who they have become. You keep reopening old conversations in your mind. You replay memories and wonder, what happened to them? But perhaps the better question is this: why are you asking life to return something it was never designed to keep unchanged? Impermanence is not life punishing you. Impermanence is life itself. The people we love change. The relationships we cherish change, and eventually we change too. There is grief in accepting this truth, but there is also freedom, because the moment you stop chasing the person who exists only in memory, you begin making space for reality. You stop comparing every new experience to an old chapter. You stop demanding that the present recreate the past. You stop waiting for yesterday to return, and instead you begin meeting life as it is, not as you wish it had been, not as you hoped it would become, but as it truly exists in this moment. And perhaps this is one of the most compassionate things you can do for yourself: to stop asking your heart to keep loving a photograph, to stop begging memories to become reality again, to stop searching for someone who only exists in the museum of your mind. Because the person you miss was real, the love you felt was real, the memories were real, but they belong to a version of life that no longer exists. And healing begins the moment you stop trying to go back and gently whisper to yourself, "It was beautiful while it lasted. It mattered. It changed me. But I cannot live in yesterday any longer." Because your life is not behind you. It is still unfolding, and the peace you are searching for will never be found by reopening old chapters over and over again. It will be found the day you finally accept that the person you miss exists only in memory, and choose to return your attention to the life that is waiting for you here, now, in the present moment. Your mind keeps rewriting the story to avoid the truth. There is something the human mind does when it is hurting that very few people talk about. It rewrites the story. Not because you are weak, not because you are foolish, but because the truth can sometimes feel too painful to accept all at once. Think about the person you cannot let go of. When their name enters your mind, what do you remember first? You probably remember the beautiful moments. You remember the way they smiled at you across the room. You remember the excitement of receiving their messages. You remember the late-night conversations that made you lose track of time. You remember the way they held your hand when life felt uncertain. You remember the inside jokes that nobody else understood. You remember the first time they said something that made you believe you mattered to them. You remember how special you felt in their presence. And suddenly your heart begins whispering the same painful thought. It wasn't supposed to end like this. But have you noticed something strange? When we miss someone deeply, our minds become selective. We replay the scenes that comfort us. We revisit the moments that make us smile. We polish old memories until they shine brighter than they ever did in real life. Meanwhile, we quietly push the painful parts into the shadows. We forget the nights you cried yourself to sleep because of something they said. We forget how anxious you felt waiting for a reply that never came. We forget how often you questioned your own worth because of the inconsistency in the relationship. We forget the disappointment, the confusion, the emotional exhaustion, the times you felt unseen, unwanted, or not enough, the arguments that left you feeling broken, the promises that were never kept, the moments when your heart was trying to warn you that something wasn't right. Instead, your mind edits those scenes out of the story. It creates a version that feels safer to revisit, because longing doesn't want the truth. Longing wants comfort. It wants to believe that what you lost was perfect, because if it was perfect, then your pain feels justified. If they were perfect, then of course you cannot move on. If they were the only person who could have made you happy, then it makes sense that your heart still refuses to let go. But Buddhist wisdom gently challenges this illusion. It asks us to look at reality without adding or removing anything, not through the eyes of fear, not through the eyes of loneliness, but through awareness. And awareness asks difficult questions. Was the relationship really as beautiful as you remember it? Or are you remembering only the parts that help you avoid the grief of letting go? Were you truly at peace, or were you constantly trying to earn love that should have come naturally? Did you feel safe, or were you always afraid of losing them? Did you feel accepted for who you were, or did you spend years becoming smaller just to keep them close? These questions are uncomfortable because they force us to step outside the fantasy we created. The truth is, most relationships are neither completely wonderful nor completely terrible. They are human, messy, complicated, filled with love and misunderstanding, joy and disappointment, connection and distance. No one is entirely a villain. No one is entirely a hero. And yet, after loss, the mind struggles to accept complexity. It prefers extremes. It wants to believe that the person who left was either perfect or terrible, because simple stories are easier to carry than complicated truths. But healing requires honesty. Imagine that someone recorded your entire relationship from beginning to end. Every conversation, every silence, every misunderstanding, every time you laughed until your stomach hurt, every moment you felt ignored, every beautiful memory, every painful one. Now imagine sitting down and watching that recording without skipping a single scene. Would you still tell yourself that it was perfect? Would you still believe that losing that relationship meant losing your only chance at happiness? Or would you finally see that what you have been grieving is not reality itself, but the version of reality your mind created to protect you from pain? This is one of the mind's oldest survival strategies. It edits the story because it believes that remembering only the good parts will keep love alive. It believes that if you stop idealizing the relationship, then all those years, all that effort, all that hope meant nothing. But that isn't true. Accepting reality does not erase the love you felt. It does not mean those moments were fake. It does not mean you didn't care deeply. It simply means you are brave enough to see the whole picture. You can appreciate the beautiful memories without pretending there was no suffering. You can acknowledge the pain without denying the love that once existed. You can honor what the relationship taught you without turning it into something sacred that must never be released. Because sometimes the reason you cannot let go is not because the relationship was extraordinary. It is because your mind keeps returning to an edited version of the story, a version where they always understood you, a version where they never disappointed you, a version where everything would have worked out if life had just given you one more chance. But life rarely gives us perfect endings. Most people leave our lives without explanation, without closure, without becoming the people we hoped they would be. And perhaps true healing begins when you stop asking the past to become more beautiful than it really was. Perhaps healing begins when you stop fighting reality and simply say, "It was meaningful, it was imperfect, it hurt me in some ways and healed me in others. It taught me lessons I could not have learned any other way. but I no longer need to rewrite the story to justify holding on to it. Because peace is not found in pretending that everything was wonderful. Peace is found in seeing clearly, without exaggeration, without denial, without nostalgia turning pain into destiny. The relationship does not need to become a tragedy for your suffering to be valid. It does not need to become a fairy tale for your love to have been real. It only needs to be remembered honestly, and maybe that is the greatest gift awareness can offer you. To stop worshipping an edited memory, to stop chasing a story that never truly existed, and to finally release the exhausting burden of trying to protect an illusion. Because the moment you begin remembering the past as it truly was, instead of how loneliness wants you to remember it, something remarkable happens. Your heart softens, your mind quiets, and for the first time in a very long while, you realize that you are not losing the love. You are simply letting go of the fantasy. And sometimes, that is where freedom finally begins. Attachment wears the mask of love and fools the heart. One of the most painful truths we have to face in life is that not everything we call love is actually love. Sometimes what we believe is love is attachment, and attachment can look so much like love that even the wisest among us struggle to tell the difference. This is why some people continue suffering for years after someone leaves. This is why they replay old conversations in their minds before they fall asleep. This is why they keep checking their phone, hoping for a message that never comes. This is why they tell themselves, if I still miss them this much, it must mean they were the love of my life. But Buddhist wisdom invites us to pause and ask a difficult question. Are you suffering because you loved them? Or are you suffering because you became attached to what they gave you? At first, the difference seems small, but it changes everything. Love says, I care about your happiness, even if life takes us in different directions. Attachment says, I cannot be okay unless you stay. Love allows another person to be human. Attachment turns another person into a necessity. Love appreciates. Attachment possesses. Love flows, attachment clings. And the problem with clinging is that life was never designed to stay still. People change, relationships change, circumstances change. Nothing in this world can be held forever. Yet attachment whispers something dangerous into the heart. It says, without this person, I cannot survive. They complete me. They are the reason I wake up every morning. I will never be happy again if they leave. Slowly, without realizing it, you stop seeing them as another human being. You begin seeing them as your source of peace, your source of joy, your source of identity, your source of security. And this is where suffering quietly begins. Because the moment another person becomes responsible for your emotional survival, fear enters the relationship. You become afraid of losing them, afraid of disappointing them, afraid they will change their mind, afraid they will choose someone else, afraid that one day they will wake up and no longer love you the way they once did. You may not even notice it happening, but little by little, you begin abandoning yourself. You stop expressing your true feelings because you don't want to upset them. You tolerate behavior that hurts you because losing them feels worse than losing your self-respect. You accept less than you deserve because having part of them feels safer than having none of them. You become smaller just to keep them comfortable. You apologize for things that were never your fault. You ignore your own needs. You silence your intuition. And all the while you call it love. But is it really love if you have to betray yourself to maintain it? Imagine holding a bird in your hands. If you love it, you admire its beauty. You appreciate its presence. You care for it gently. You understand that it was never yours to own, but attachment squeezes tighter. It grips harder. It fears that if it loosens its hold, it will lose everything. And eventually, the very thing it is trying to protect begins to suffer under the weight of that fear. Many of us learned attachment long before we learned love. Maybe as children, we discovered that affection had conditions. Maybe we learned that being chosen meant being worthy. Maybe we believed that if someone left us, it meant there was something wrong with us. So when we finally found someone who made us feel special, we clung to them with everything we had. not because we were weak, but because we were trying to protect ourselves from old wounds. We weren't only loving them, we were trying to escape loneliness, trying to heal abandonment, trying to prove that we were enough, trying to finally receive the security we had been searching for our entire lives. This is why losing them feels unbearable, because it doesn't only reopen the pain of the present, it awakens every fear you thought you had buried. The fear of being unwanted, the fear of being forgotten, the fear that you will always be too much for some people and not enough for others. And suddenly you are not grieving one person, you are grieving every version of yourself that ever begged to be chosen. But this is where Buddhist wisdom offers compassion instead of shame. It does not say you should not have loved. It says, look closely at what you were holding on to. Were you loving them, or were you asking them to save you from yourself? Were you appreciating their presence, or were you depending on their presence to feel complete? Because another person can walk beside you, they can support you, they can bring joy into your life, but they were never meant to carry the responsibility of becoming your entire world. No human being can successfully bear that weight. Eventually, they will disappoint you, not because they are cruel, but because they are human, and humans cannot give us permanent certainty in an impermanent world. Real love does not say, I need you in order to exist. Real love says, I choose you, but I do not abandon myself in the process. Real love allows closeness without losing identity. It allows connection without control. It allows devotion without desperation. It says, I love you deeply, but my peace does not depend entirely on your presence. This kind of love is not cold. It is not detached in the way many people fear. It is actually the purest form of love, because it is rooted in freedom instead of fear. And perhaps that is the lesson life has been trying to teach you through this loss. Not that loving others is dangerous, not that opening your heart is a mistake, but that no relationship should require you to disappear. No relationship should demand that you trade your dignity for affection. No relationship should convince you that without another person's approval, you are nothing. You were whole before they entered your life. You had value before they noticed you. You were worthy before they chose you, and you remain worthy even if they walk away. Maybe the reason you cannot let go is because you have mistaken attachment for love for a very long time. And maybe healing begins the moment you stop asking, how do I get them back? And start asking a much more powerful question. What part of me believed I could not survive without them? Because the answer to that question will not lead you back to them. It will lead you back to yourself. And perhaps that is where the deepest form of love has been waiting all along. Not in holding tighter, not in chasing harder, not in sacrificing yourself to avoid being left behind, but in finally understanding that love should expand your life, not imprison it. Because attachment says, I cannot live without you. But wisdom gently whispers, you can miss them, love them, and honor what they meant to you, while still choosing to save yourself. And the day you truly understand that difference is the day your heart begins to heal, not because you stopped loving, but because you finally stopped abandoning yourself in the name of love. You didn't fall in love with them, you fell in love with their potential. One of the most heartbreaking realizations you can have is understanding that sometimes the person you cannot let go of is not the person who actually existed. It is the person you believed they could become. This truth is difficult to accept because it forces us to separate reality from hope. And hope can be one of the hardest things to release. Think about the beginning of that relationship. You saw something in them that others may not have noticed. You saw their kindness beneath their confusion. You saw their softness behind their emotional walls. You saw the good parts of them that appeared in small moments. You noticed the way they cared when they were fully present. You noticed the dreams they talked about, the promises they made, the effort they occasionally showed. And because you had a beautiful heart, you didn't only see who they were, you saw who they could become. You saw the person they had the potential to be. You imagined the version of them that healed from their pain, the version that became emotionally available the version that learned how to communicate, the version that finally chose you completely, the version that stopped running, the version that gave you the love you were waiting for. And without realizing it, you slowly fell in love with that future version, not the person standing in front of you, but the person you hoped they would one day become. Maybe you told yourself, they've just been hurt before. They just need more time. They don't know how to express love. They'll change once they realize how much I care. If I love them enough, they'll eventually become the person I know they can be. And perhaps for a while, those beliefs gave you strength. They gave you a reason to stay, a reason to keep trying, a reason to forgive things you should not have had to forgive. You overlooked red flags because you were focused on future possibilities. You ignored your intuition because hope was louder. You settled for inconsistency because you believed consistency would eventually come. You accepted breadcrumbs because you were waiting for a feast. You stayed in situations that made your heart ache because you convinced yourself that the ending would justify the suffering. You weren't loving who they repeatedly showed themselves to be. You were loving who you imagined they might become. And this happens more often than people realize. Some people spend years waiting for another person to become ready to commit, ready to communicate, ready to heal, ready to love properly, ready to choose them, and every small act of kindness becomes proof that the version they are waiting for still exists. One good day erases 10 painful ones. One affectionate message becomes evidence that things are finally changing. One apology renews years of hope. And so they stay, not because reality is fulfilling them, but because potential keeps feeding their dreams. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that suffering often begins when we become attached to what is not real. And potential is one of the most seductive illusions of all. Because potential feels real, it feels close enough to touch. You can almost see it, almost reach it, almost live inside it. But potential is not reality. Potential has never held your hand. Potential has never shown up consistently. Potential has never built a healthy relationship. Reality has. And reality asks a much simpler question. Who are they showing themselves to be right now? Not who they could be. Not who they promised to become. Not who they might become someday if everything goes perfectly. But who are they today? Because people are not projects. They are not unfinished dreams waiting for your sacrifice to complete them. It is not your responsibility to rescue another person's potential. It is not your job to love someone into becoming who they refuse to be. You can inspire people. You can encourage people. You can support people. But you cannot transform them through the force of your love alone. Real change happens when people choose it for themselves. And perhaps this is why your heart hurts so much. Because you are grieving two losses at the same time. You are grieving the person who existed, and you are grieving the future you imagined with them, the vacations you pictured, the home you dreamed about, the mornings you thought you would wake up beside them, the family traditions you created in your imagination, the conversations you never had, the anniversaries that never came, the life you believed was waiting just around the corner. Those dreams felt real. You invested emotionally in moments that never actually happened. So when the relationship ended, you didn't just lose a person, you lost an entire future. You lost the story you had been telling yourself. And grieving an imagined future can sometimes hurt even more than grieving reality. Because there are no memories to hold, only possibilities, only what-ifs. What if they had changed? What if they had healed? What if they had finally realized your worth? What if you had waited a little longer? What if love had been enough? But the mind can spend a lifetime trapped inside those questions, and none of them change the truth. The truth is that the person you needed them to become never arrived. The truth is that the version of the relationship you deserved existed mostly inside hope. And while hope is beautiful, it becomes dangerous when it asks you to abandon reality. There comes a moment in healing when you must stop asking, who could they have been? And start asking, who have they consistently shown themselves to be? That question changes everything, because it brings you back to the present moment. It frees you from chasing a fantasy. It allows you to stop negotiating with reality. And perhaps for the first time, It allows you to choose yourself. You deserve to be loved by someone who is ready now, not someone you spend years waiting to become ready. You deserve consistency, not confusion. Peace, not constant anxiety. Clarity, not endless guessing. You deserve a love that does not require you to become a therapist, a rescuer, a teacher, and a savior just to receive basic emotional safety. You deserve to be met where you are, fully, openly, willingly. And maybe the lesson life has been trying to teach you is not that you should stop believing in people, but that you should stop sacrificing yourself for promises that only exist in imagination, because love rooted in reality may not always feel as dramatic as love built on potential, but it feels safe, it feels honest, it feels peaceful, and perhaps peace is a far greater sign of true love than endless longing ever was. So maybe it is time to stop mourning the person they could have been. Maybe it is time to release the future that never arrived. Maybe it is time to thank that imagined version of them for the hope it gave you and gently let it go, because the love you are meant to receive will not ask you to wait endlessly for someone to become who they promised they would be. It will meet you in reality. Not someday, not maybe, not if they change, but here, as they are, and as you are. Because real love is not built on potential. Real love begins when two people stop asking each other to become someone else and choose each other honestly in the present moment. You lost yourself while trying not to lose them. One of the saddest things that can happen in a relationship is not that someone leaves. It is that, long before they walked away, you slowly started walking away from yourself. And the painful part is that most people don't even realize it is happening. It doesn't happen overnight. You don't wake up one morning and decide to abandon who you are. It happens quietly, almost invisibly. At first it seems harmless. You change small things to make the relationship work. You become more understanding, more patient, more flexible. You tell yourself, this is what love requires. You adjust your schedule because their needs matter. You cancel plans because they need you. You stop bringing up certain topics because they lead to arguments. You ignore little things that hurt you because you don't want to create distance. You become easier to disappoint, easier to overlook, easier to take for granted. And each sacrifice feels small. Each compromise feels reasonable. After all, relationships require effort. Relationships require understanding. Relationships require kindness. But somewhere along the way, something shifts. You stop asking yourself an important question: what do I need? Instead, your entire world begins revolving around another question: what do I need to do so they won't leave? And without realizing it, fear becomes your guide. You start measuring your worth through their attention. A good morning text determines your mood. Their affection makes you feel valuable. Their silence makes you question yourself. If they seem distant, you panic. If they seem happy, you relax. If they pull away, you blame yourself. Your emotional world becomes controlled by someone else's choices. You stop living from the inside out. You begin living from the outside in. You begin editing yourself. You say less, need less, ask for less, expect less. You become the understanding one, the patient one, the forgiving one, the one who always gives another chance, the one who says it's okay, even when your heart is breaking. You convince yourself that loving someone means enduring whatever they give you. You tell yourself that if you just become better, calmer, prettier, more supportive, more understanding, they will finally choose you the way you have been choosing them. And maybe some part of you believes this because you are afraid. Afraid that if you stop sacrificing, they will leave. Afraid that if you speak your truth, you will be too difficult to love. Afraid that if you ask for what you deserve, you will end up alone. So you keep shrinking. You become smaller and smaller until one day you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back at you. You wonder why the things you once loved no longer bring you joy. You wonder why you feel exhausted all the time. You wonder why your confidence disappeared. You wonder why you no longer know what you want from life. You wonder why you feel empty and then they leave. Or maybe they emotionally checked out long before they physically left, and suddenly everything collapses. Not only because you lost them, but because you no longer know who you are without them. You spent so much time being someone's partner that you forgot how to simply be yourself. You forgot what music you enjoy when nobody else is choosing the playlist. You forgot what dreams belonged to you before you started building your future around another person's presence. You forgot what made you feel alive before your happiness became dependent on someone else's attention. This is why letting go can feel impossible, because you are not only grieving a relationship, you are grieving an identity. The version of yourself that existed to keep someone else close, the version of yourself who constantly adapted, adjusted, and sacrificed, the version of yourself who believed that being loved meant earning your place in another person's life. But Buddhist wisdom teaches us something powerful. It teaches us that attachment to identity creates suffering. We cling to roles, we cling to stories, we cling to versions of ourselves that no longer serve us. I am the one who saves people. I am the one who never gives up. I am the one who loves harder. I am the one who fixes broken relationships. And because of these stories, we continue sacrificing ourselves long after our spirit has become exhausted. But who were you before all of that? Before you started chasing approval? Before you learned to confuse self-sacrifice with love? Before you became responsible for everyone else's emotions? Who were you before you became afraid of being abandoned? That person still exists. They have not disappeared. They have simply been waiting beneath all the roles you created to survive, beneath the people-pleasing, beneath the fear, beneath the endless effort to be enough. The real you is still there. The person who had dreams that had nothing to do with being chosen. The person who laughed freely without worrying whether someone would stay. The person who had opinions, boundaries, hobbies, desires, and a voice. The person who once believed their life had meaning beyond another person's love. Perhaps this season of loss is not punishment. Perhaps it is an invitation to remember yourself, to return to the pieces of your soul that were neglected, to rebuild the relationship you abandoned while trying to save another one, to ask yourself simple questions again. What brings me peace? What do I truly enjoy? What kind of life do I want to create? What do I deserve? What boundaries do I need? What parts of myself have I been apologizing for? Healing is not becoming the person you were before they entered your life. You cannot return to that version of yourself. Life has changed you. Pain has changed you. Wisdom has changed you. Healing is becoming someone even more whole. Someone who understands that compromise should never require self-erasure. Someone who knows that love should not cost you your identity. Someone who no longer believes that being chosen by another person determines their value. Because being loved by someone else means very little if it requires abandoning yourself in the process. And maybe this is the lesson hidden inside your heartbreak. Maybe losing them was never meant to teach you that love is dangerous. Maybe it was meant to teach you that you are worthy of love without disappearing. You are worthy without over-explaining, worthy without proving, worthy without performing, worthy without sacrificing your truth. Maybe the person you have been searching for in their return has been waiting inside you all along. The version of you who speaks honestly, who honors their needs, who trusts their intuition, who chooses themselves without guilt, who understands that relationships should add to their life, not become their entire identity. And perhaps the greatest act of healing is not learning how to stop missing them. Perhaps the greatest act of healing is finally deciding that you will never abandon yourself again. Because people may come and go, relationships may begin and end, but you will wake up with yourself every single day for the rest of your life. And maybe this heartbreak was not the end of your story. Maybe it was the moment life gently placed your own hand back into yours and whispered, "Please don't lose yourself trying to keep someone who was never meant to require your disappearance." Because the deepest love you will ever experience begins the day you stop begging others to choose you And finally, choose yourself. Your heart is still holding what your wisdom has already released. There comes a moment in almost every heartbreak when you find yourself trapped between two truths. One part of you already knows. It knows the relationship was not healthy. It knows they did not love you the way you needed to be loved. It knows you gave more chances than you should have. It knows you sacrificed pieces of yourself, trying to keep something alive that was already fading. It knows you cannot keep waiting for someone who has repeatedly shown you who they are. It knows that going back would not suddenly create the peace you have been searching for. Deep down, your wisdom understands all of this, and yet, your heart still hurts. Your heart still misses them. Your heart still wonders what they are doing. Your heart still imagines what it would feel like if their name suddenly appeared on your phone. Your heart still whispers dangerous little questions late at night. What if they changed? What if they come back? What if I gave up too soon? What if this was the person I was supposed to spend my life with? And suddenly you become frustrated with yourself. You say things like, why can't I just move on? I know better than this. I know they weren't right for me. So why do I still miss them? If you've ever asked yourself those questions, I want you to hear this very carefully. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not weak. You are not broken. And you are not moving backward. You are simply experiencing what it means to be human. Because one of the most difficult truths about healing is this: the heart does not heal at the same speed that the mind understands. Your wisdom may arrive before your emotions catch up. Your mind may accept the truth long before your heart feels ready to let go. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering often comes from resisting what we are experiencing. We think healing should be fast, clean, logical. We believe that once we understand something, we should immediately stop feeling pain. But emotions don't work that way. Imagine touching a hot stove. Even after you pull your hand away, the burn remains. You know the danger has passed, but your skin still needs time to heal. The same thing happens with the heart. You may understand that someone was not good for you. You may recognize the relationship had reached its end. You may accept that they are no longer part of your life. But your heart still remembers. It remembers the routines, the familiarity, the dreams, the small moments that became woven into your everyday existence. It remembers how safe you once felt, how excited you once felt, how hopeful you once felt. And because of that, your emotions continue reaching toward what your wisdom has already released. This is why healing can feel so confusing. One day you feel strong, you feel free, you finally believe you're moving forward. Then suddenly, a song comes on the radio, a memory appears. You pass by a familiar place. You see someone who reminds you of them, and without warning, the grief returns. You think, I thought I was over this. But healing was never meant to be a straight line. It moves in circles, in waves, in seasons. Some days, acceptance feels easy. Other days, your heart aches as though the loss happened yesterday. This does not mean you are failing. It means you are healing honestly. Many people try to rush this process. They become angry at themselves for still caring. They force themselves to suppress their emotions. They pretend they are fine. They distract themselves endlessly. They date someone new before they have made peace with the old wounds. They convince themselves that missing someone means they should go back. But missing someone is not always a sign that you belong together. Sometimes it is simply evidence that they mattered, that they were part of your story, that your heart formed an attachment that now needs time to untangle itself. Missing someone does not mean they were your destiny. Loving someone does not mean they were meant to stay forever. Pain is not proof that you made the wrong decision. Sometimes pain is simply the price of allowing your heart to release what it once held so tightly. There is another reason your heart struggles to let go. The heart loves familiarity. Even painful familiarity can feel safer than uncertain freedom. You knew how to be the person who loved them. You knew how to wait for their messages. You knew how to hope for their attention. You knew how to survive inside that emotional pattern. But healing asks you to enter unfamiliar territory, a future without them, a version of yourself that no longer revolves around waiting, a life where you choose peace instead of chasing certainty, and unfamiliarity is frightening. The heart often mistakes familiarity for safety. It says, "On en nu der bist neen." At least I knew what to expect. At least I understood that pain. At least I knew who I was inside that story. This is why people sometimes return to relationships that hurt them, not because they forgot the suffering, but because uncertainty feels more terrifying than familiar pain. Buddha understood this deeply. He taught that attachment causes suffering because we cling to what feels known, even when it no longer serves us. We cling to identities, to routines, to stories, to people, even after wisdom gently tells us it is time to let go. But wisdom is patient. It does not scream, it does not shame, it simply waits. It sits quietly inside you and says, you don't have to force your heart to stop loving overnight. You don't have to hate them in order to heal. You don't have to erase the memories to move forward. You only need to stop feeding the hope that keeps reopening the wound. This is the part many people misunderstand. Healing does not require you to become cold. You can still appreciate what was beautiful. You can still acknowledge what they meant to you. You can still carry gratitude for the lessons they brought into your life, without giving them permanent ownership over your future. You can say, yes, I loved them. Yes, they mattered. Yes, losing them hurt. And yes, I am still choosing to move forward. That is not betrayal. That is wisdom. There will be days when your heart misses them. Let it. There will be nights when tears unexpectedly return. Let them. There will be moments when old memories visit you. Do not panic. Do not judge yourself. Simply notice them. Welcome them gently and allow them to pass. Because healing is not the absence of longing. Healing is learning that longing no longer controls your choices. One day, without even realizing it, something will shift. You will think of them and feel gratitude instead of desperation. You will remember their name without losing your peace. You will revisit old memories without wanting to rebuild the life you once imagined. And you will understand something beautiful. Your heart was never trying to destroy you. It was simply trying to protect what it once believed it needed to survive. But now, your wisdom knows better. It knows that your life did not end when they left. It knows that peace is possible again. It knows that love still exists beyond this chapter. It knows that you can miss someone and still choose yourself. Perhaps that is what true healing really is. Not forcing your heart to forget. Not pretending you never cared, not rushing yourself toward indifference, but lovingly allowing your heart to rest in the truth your wisdom has already accepted. The truth that some people were meant to teach you, not stay with you. The truth that letting go does not erase love. And the truth that even though your heart may still look backward from time to time, your soul already knows the way forward. Because the deepest form of healing begins the moment you stop asking, why do I still miss them? And start saying, my heart is learning to trust what my wisdom already knows. And that wisdom has been whispering to you all along. You can love what was, honor what it taught you, and still walk peacefully toward the life that is waiting ahead. Loneliness turns the past into something it never was. There are moments in life when loneliness becomes so quiet that nobody else can see it. You can be surrounded by people. You can laugh at dinner. You can answer messages. You can go to work, complete your responsibilities, and appear perfectly fine on the outside. But then night arrives. The distractions fade. The noise disappears. And suddenly, you are left alone with your thoughts. It is often in these moments that the people we thought we had let go of begin returning to our minds. You think about their smile, their voice, the way they used to sit beside you. The little things that once annoyed you somehow become precious. You begin replaying old conversations. You revisit photographs you promised yourself you would never look at again. You remember birthdays, special moments, and ordinary afternoons that once felt meaningful simply because they were there. And before you realize what is happening, your heart begins whispering something dangerous. Maybe they were the one. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I will never find a connection like that again. Maybe I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. If you have ever experienced this, I want you to understand something very important. Loneliness is powerful, but loneliness is not always truthful. Loneliness has a way of changing the way we remember the past. It paints over the cracks. It softens painful memories. It removes the discomfort. It transforms ordinary experiences into extraordinary ones. It takes people who were imperfect and places them on pedestals they were never meant to stand on. This is why someone who made you cry more than they made you smile can suddenly become the person you believe you cannot live without. This is why someone who constantly confused you can begin to look like the only person who truly understood you. This is why people return to relationships they once prayed to escape. Not because the relationship changed, but because loneliness changed the story. The human heart fears emptiness. It fears silence. It fears uncertainty. And when loneliness enters the room, the mind often searches through old memories looking for relief. It says, remember when you weren't alone? Remember when someone texted you good morning? Remember when you had someone to share your day with? And because those memories offer temporary comfort, we mistake them for truth. But Buddhist wisdom teaches us that craving often grows strongest during moments of discomfort. When we feel empty, we reach for what is familiar. When we feel uncertain, we long for what once gave us stability. When we feel lonely, we romanticize the past, not because the past was perfect, but because it feels safer than the unknown future. The truth is, many people are not actually missing the person. They are missing what that person protected them from. They miss having someone to talk to at the end of the day. They miss feeling wanted. They miss having plans on weekends. They miss the comfort of knowing someone was there. They miss certainty. They miss companionship. And because loneliness is painful, they convince themselves that the only solution is getting that specific person back. But what if that isn't true? What if you are not grieving the loss of your soulmate? What if you are grieving the loss of familiarity? Think about it honestly. If you met that exact same person today, exactly as they are now, with no shared history and no memories attached to them, would you still choose them? Would you accept the same behavior? Would you tolerate the same pain? Would you ignore the same red flags? Or is it possible that history has given them a special place in your heart that reality no longer supports? These are difficult questions, but they are important, because loneliness can convince you that your future ended when someone left. It whispers, you had your chance. You'll never connect with anyone like that again. No one will understand you the way they did. You are running out of time. But loneliness speaks from fear, not wisdom. Fear focuses on scarcity. Wisdom remembers possibility. Fear says, this was your only chance. Wisdom says, this was one chapter of a much bigger story. Fear says, you will always be alone. Wisdom says, you are simply in a season of rediscovering yourself. Fear says, go back to what hurt you because at least it is familiar. Wisdom says, you deserve peace, not just familiarity. There is another reason loneliness distorts the past. When we lose someone, we often compare our present reality to our best memories. And this comparison is unfair because your present life contains unpaid bills, stress, responsibilities, uncertainty, and ordinary moments. Meanwhile, the past becomes a highlight reel. You compare your worst days now to your best moments then. Of course the past wins, but that comparison isn't reality. No relationship is made entirely of magical moments. There were ordinary days, misunderstandings, frustrations, disappointments, doubts, human imperfections. The problem is not that we remember the beautiful moments. The problem is when we forget everything else. Healing does not require you to stop appreciating what was good. It simply asks you to remember honestly, to remember the whole story, not just the parts loneliness wants you to replay. There is nothing wrong with missing companionship. There is nothing wrong with wishing someone had stayed. There is nothing wrong with longing for connection. You are human. You were made to love and be loved. But loneliness becomes dangerous when it convinces you to betray yourself just to avoid being alone. When it tells you to return to places that broke your spirit. When it asks you to shrink your standards for the comfort of familiarity. when it persuades you to reopen wounds that have finally begun to heal. Buddha taught that suffering often comes from grasping at what cannot satisfy us permanently. We believe another person will remove our emptiness forever, but no human being can do that, because emptiness is not always asking for another person. Sometimes it is asking for your presence, your compassion, your attention, your friendship toward yourself. Perhaps this season of loneliness is not punishment. Perhaps it is preparation. Perhaps life is teaching you how to sit peacefully with yourself, how to enjoy your own company, how to build a life that feels meaningful without depending entirely on another person's presence, how to discover that being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. Being alone simply means no one else is in the room. Being lonely is the feeling of being disconnected from yourself. And maybe that is the invitation hidden inside this pain, not to run back to the past, but to come home to the present, to create routines that nourish your spirit, to reconnect with old passions, to strengthen friendships, to care for your body, to explore who you are outside of romantic attachment, to become someone whose life feels full, even before another person enters it, because the goal is not to stop wanting love. The goal is to stop using love as an escape from yourself. One day, you will look back and realize something surprising. You did not actually miss them as much as you thought. You missed being seen. You missed being held. You missed sharing your life. You missed hope. And once you learned how to offer some of those things to yourself, the desperate longing slowly softened. The memories remained, but they no longer controlled you. You stopped confusing loneliness with destiny. You stopped mistaking emptiness for love. And you finally understood that just because someone once filled a space in your life does not mean they are the only person capable of doing so. Because your story did not end when they left. The future did not close its doors. Love did not disappear from the world. You are simply standing between chapters, and loneliness, no matter how convincing it sounds, is only a visitor. It is not your permanent home. So the next time loneliness tries to turn the past into something it never was, pause for a moment and gently remind yourself, I can honor what I had without worshipping it. I can miss what was beautiful without forgetting why it ended. I can feel lonely without running back to what hurt me. And most importantly, I can trust that the life waiting ahead of me may hold forms of love, peace and joy that I cannot yet imagine, because loneliness tells you that your best days are behind you. But wisdom quietly whispers, the story isn't over yet. You cannot go back to the person you used to be. One of the quietest forms of suffering is the belief that if you could just go back, everything would finally be okay. You tell yourself that if they returned, you could start over. You imagine having one more conversation, one more chance, one more opportunity to say the things you never said. You think about how different things would be if only life gave you another beginning. Maybe this time you would love them better. Maybe this time you would be more patient. Maybe this time you would not overreact. Maybe this time they would understand you. Maybe this time both of you would finally get it right. And for a few moments that fantasy feels comforting. It gives you hope. It allows you to believe that the pain you are carrying can still be undone. But Buddhist wisdom asks us to face a truth that is both heartbreaking and liberating. You cannot go back, not because you don't deserve another chance, not because life is unfair, but because the person who once stood at that beginning no longer exists. The version of you who first met them is gone. The version of you who fell in love without hesitation has changed. The version of you who believed certain promises without question has changed. The version of you who knew nothing about heartbreak, disappointment, grief, and letting go has changed. Life has touched you since then. Pain has shaped you. Loss has shaped you. The tears you cried in silence shaped you. The nights you spent wondering why you weren't enough shaped you. The mornings you forced yourself to get out of bed when your heart felt heavy shaped you. The difficult conversations, the disappointments, the moments you had to choose survival over comfort, all of it changed you. You are not the same person anymore, and neither are they. That is why trying to recreate the past often leads to even more suffering. Because what you are really trying to return to is not a relationship. You are trying to return to a version of yourself that only existed before life taught you certain lessons. You miss the innocence. You miss the certainty. You miss the way your future once looked. You miss the person you were before you understood how fragile things could be. But time does not move backward. A river never flows in reverse. The same water never passes through your hands twice. And neither does life. Even if the person you miss walked back into your life tomorrow, everything would be different. You would notice things you once ignored. You would hear certain words differently. You would recognize warning signs more quickly. You would carry memories of how things ended. You would bring your fears into the room. Your heart would hesitate where it once trusted freely, because experience changes us. There is an old tendency within the human heart to romanticize the past. We remember old photographs and think, I was happier then. I had everything I needed then. That was the best version of my life. But memory often forgets the struggles that existed during those moments. It forgets the confusion, the insecurity, the unanswered questions, the fears you carried. You were not living inside perfection. You were simply living inside a chapter that had not yet revealed its ending. And because you did not know what was coming, it now appears more beautiful than it actually felt at times. Many people spend years standing at the doorway of an old chapter, refusing to walk forward because they believe the best part of their life has already happened. They keep revisiting old memories, replaying old conversations, asking impossible questions. What if I had stayed? What if I had fought harder? What if I had done something differently? But there is no peace hiding inside those questions, because no matter how many times you replay the past, you are replaying it with the wisdom you only gained afterward. The person you were back then did the best they could with what they knew at the time. You loved with the awareness you had. You made decisions with the understanding you possessed. You cannot judge your past self using the wisdom that pain eventually taught you. Perhaps one of the greatest acts of compassion is learning to forgive the person you used to be. Forgive yourself for not knowing what you know now. Forgive yourself for trusting. Forgive yourself for staying too long. Forgive yourself for leaving too soon. Forgive yourself for loving deeply. Forgive yourself for being human. Because healing is not about becoming who you were before all of this happened. That version of you had beautiful qualities, but they also lacked the wisdom you carry now. Healing is about becoming someone new, someone who still has the courage to love, but also understands the importance of boundaries, someone who still believes in people but no longer abandons themselves to keep others close, someone who remains soft without becoming fragile, someone who can open their heart without losing their identity, someone who chooses peace over chaos. This is what suffering can teach us when we stop resisting it. It transforms us, not into colder people, but into wiser ones. The tragedy is not that you changed. The tragedy would be experiencing all of this pain and learning nothing from it. Life did not break you. It revealed you. It showed you your strength, your resilience, your capacity to survive what you once thought would destroy you. You may not recognize yourself anymore, but perhaps that is not something to fear. Perhaps it is something to honor, because the person you are becoming understands things the old version of you never could. They understand that being chosen by another person does not determine their worth. They understand that peace is more valuable than temporary excitement. They understand that love should never require self-abandonment. They understand that endings are not proof of failure. Sometimes endings are invitations into deeper wisdom. There is grief in accepting that you cannot go back. There is sadness in realizing that some seasons of life exist only as memories. There is pain in understanding that certain versions of yourself belong to the past. But there is also freedom, because the moment you stop trying to return to who you used to be, you become available for who you are meant to become. You stop worshipping old identities. You stop chasing lost versions of yourself. You stop asking life to reverse what it was always meant to transform. And instead, you begin meeting yourself with curiosity. Who am I now? What do I value now? What kind of love do I want now? What kind of life do I want to build from this point forward? These questions lead you somewhere much more beautiful than nostalgia ever could. They lead you into the present, and perhaps this is the deepest truth hidden inside heartbreak. You were never meant to return to the person you used to be. You were meant to carry their innocence, keep their tenderness, learn from their mistakes, and then continue walking. Because every version of you had a purpose. The one who trusted too easily, the one who loved too deeply, the one who stayed too long, the one who finally let go. None of them were wasted. They all brought you here, to this moment, to this wiser version of yourself. So maybe the question is no longer, how do I get back to who I was before all of this? Maybe the real question is, who am I becoming because of all of this? Because your life is not asking you to move backward. It is inviting you to move forward, not as the person you once were, but as someone stronger, softer, wiser, more awake. And perhaps one day, you will look back at the person you used to be with gratitude instead of longing. You will smile gently and say, "Thank you for getting me this far. Thank you for loving with everything you had. Thank you for surviving what you didn't think you could survive." And then, with compassion in your heart and wisdom in your hands, you will do the bravest thing of all. You will stop looking behind you, and you will continue walking toward the life that is still waiting for you ahead. Healing begins when memory stops controlling your present. One of the greatest misunderstandings about healing is the belief that healing means forgetting. People often think that moving on means waking up one morning and realizing that the person's name no longer affects them. They believe healing means deleting every photograph, erasing every memory, and pretending that someone who once meant everything suddenly meant nothing. But real healing does not work that way. Buddhist wisdom does not teach us to erase the past. It teaches us to change our relationship with it. Because the goal is not to forget. The goal is to remember without suffering. Right now, for many people, memory is not simply a memory. It is a place they still live. A song instantly takes them back. A familiar scent brings tears to their eyes. A random thought in the middle of the day changes their entire mood. A photograph steals their peace. A certain date on the calendar reopens wounds they thought had finally healed. They are physically living in the present, but emotionally, they are still trapped inside yesterday. Perhaps you know what that feels like. You are washing dishes, and suddenly you remember a conversation from years ago. You are driving home, and you imagine what life would have been like if they had stayed. You wake up feeling fine, but one memory quietly enters your mind and follows you for the rest of the day. Without realizing it, memories begin deciding how you feel. They determine whether your morning starts with gratitude or sadness. They decide whether you enjoy today or compare it to the past. They shape your relationships. They influence your choices. And little by little, yesterday starts stealing today. This is the hidden suffering Buddha warned us about. Not pain itself, but our attachment to pain, because pain is natural. Loss hurts. Goodbyes hurt. Disappointment hurts. The first wave of grief is part of being human. But suffering grows when we keep reopening the wound long after life has asked us to move forward. Imagine carrying a heavy stone in your hands. At first, the weight feels manageable, but after days, weeks, months, and years of refusing to put it down, your arms begin to ache. You become exhausted. You forget what it feels like to walk freely. The stone itself may not have changed, but your decision to keep carrying it continues the suffering. Many people do this with memories. They replay the same scenes over and over again. The last conversation, the moment everything changed, the words they wish they had said, the apology they never received, the future they lost. They revisit these memories so often that they become emotional habits. The mind returns to them automatically, not because it enjoys suffering, but because familiarity feels safe. Even familiar pain can become comforting because it is known. The unknown future feels uncertain. The past, no matter how painful, feels predictable. So we keep going back. We revisit old messages. We search their social media. We imagine alternate endings. We argue with reality in our minds. If only I had done this. If only they had understood. If only I had one more chance. And while our bodies continue aging, our hearts remain seated in an old room, waiting for a different ending. But healing begins with a simple realization: the past cannot be changed. No amount of replaying will rewrite the story. No amount of overthinking will create a new ending. No amount of longing will bring back the version of life that once existed. At first, this truth feels devastating, but eventually it becomes freeing. Because if you cannot change yesterday, then you no longer have to spend all your energy trying. You can finally place the burden down. Buddhist mindfulness teaches us to notice memories without becoming imprisoned by them. A memory appears, you acknowledge it, you honor it. You allow yourself to feel whatever emotion rises. But you do not build a home there. You do not unpack your bags and move back into the past. You gently return your attention to this moment, to the breath entering your body, to the sunlight coming through the window, to the cup of tea in your hands, to the people who are still present in your life, to the opportunities that still exist, to the fact that you are alive. This moment is where life is happening, not 5 years ago, not inside imagined conversations, not inside old photographs. Here, now. Many people fear that if they stop revisiting memories, they will betray the person they lost. They think, if I stop hurting, it means they didn't matter. If I stop crying, it means I didn't love deeply enough. If I move on, I am abandoning what we had. But healing is not betrayal. It is not forgetting. It is not disrespect. You can cherish the memories and still choose peace. You can appreciate what someone meant to you without allowing them permanent ownership over your emotional life. You can say, that chapter mattered. It shaped me. It taught me lessons I needed to learn. But it no longer gets to decide who I become. There is a beautiful difference between carrying wisdom and carrying wounds. Wisdom teaches, wounds control. Wisdom says, I remember what happened and I grew from it. Wounds say, I remember what happened and I cannot live beyond it. Healing is choosing wisdom. It is allowing the pain to become a teacher instead of a prison. There may still be moments when memories visit you unexpectedly. A song may still make your heart pause. A familiar place may still stir emotions. A certain season of the year may still carry sadness. This does not mean you have failed. It means you are human. Healing does not remove memories. It changes their power. One day, you will remember without collapsing. You will think of them without questioning your worth. You will revisit old chapters without wishing to live inside them again. You will smile at certain moments. You may even cry, but the tears will feel softer, gentler. They will not be tears of desperation. They will be tears of gratitude. Gratitude for what was beautiful. Gratitude for what was learned. Gratitude for how far you have come. Perhaps that is what healing truly looks like. Not forgetting, not pretending, not becoming cold, but reaching a place where memory no longer controls your present, where the past becomes part of your story without becoming your identity, where you stop asking life to return what it has already transformed, where you stop sacrificing today's peace to relive yesterday's pain, because this moment matters. The people who love you now matter. The dreams you have not yet discovered matter. The person you are becoming matters. Your future deserves your attention more than your memories deserve your captivity. And maybe the greatest act of self-compassion is finally giving yourself permission to live again, to laugh without guilt, to hope without fear, to create new memories without comparing them to old ones, to love again without believing that loving forward dishonors what came before. Because the truth is, healing begins the moment memory loses its authority over your present life. The moment you stop asking, why can't I forget? And start asking, how can I fully return to this moment? Because life has never been waiting for you in the past. It has always been waiting for you here, in this breath, in this sunrise, in this ordinary day that you almost missed while looking backward. And perhaps the person you have been waiting to save you from yesterday is the version of yourself who finally decides, I have remembered enough. Now I choose to live. The person you have been searching for may be yourself. There is a moment in every healing journey when a surprising question begins to rise from somewhere deep inside you. What if the person I have been looking for all this time is not them? What if the person I miss the most is actually me? At first, this idea feels strange, because for so long, your attention has been focused outward. You have been asking questions about them. Why did they leave? Did they ever truly love me? Do they miss me? Would things have been different if I had tried harder? Will they ever come back? What if I never find someone like them again? Your mind becomes a detective, searching for answers in old conversations, memories, and imagined scenarios. You revisit the past, hoping to find the missing piece that will finally bring you peace. You believe that if you could just understand them, your suffering would end. But what if peace has been waiting in an entirely different direction? What if the answers you have been chasing outside yourself are actually invitations to return inward? Because sometimes when people say, I miss them, what they are really saying is something much deeper. I miss who I used to be. I miss the version of myself that laughed without forcing it. I miss the person who trusted easily. I miss the dreams I stopped believing in. I miss the joy that used to come naturally. I miss feeling excited about life. I miss feeling like I mattered. And perhaps this is the deepest grief of all. Not losing another person, but losing touch with yourself. Somewhere along the way, while loving them, you slowly drifted away from the person you once knew. You became so focused on understanding their moods that you stopped listening to your own feelings. You became so committed to meeting their needs that you forgot your own. You learned their favorite songs, their routines, their fears, their hopes. But when was the last time you asked yourself what you needed? What brought you peace? What made you come alive? What kind of life you truly wanted? Many people can tell you exactly how their former partner takes their coffee. They can remember birthdays, favorite movies, and tiny details from years ago. But ask them what they love about themselves, and they fall silent. Ask them what dream they abandoned. Ask them what makes them feel most connected to life. Ask them what kind of future they want independent of anyone else's approval. And suddenly they don't know, because somewhere along the journey, they stopped being the main character in their own story. Buddhist wisdom teaches that suffering often arises from forgetting our true nature. We become attached to identities, roles, and external sources of validation. We believe that being chosen by someone else gives us value. We believe that being loved proves we are enough. We search for ourselves in relationships. We ask other people to tell us who we are. We hand them the responsibility of defining our worth. And when they leave, we feel as though they have taken part of us with them. But what if they never actually took anything? What if the love you admired in them was also living inside you? What if the compassion you offered them revealed your own beautiful heart? What if the patience you showed reflected your own strength? What if the loyalty you gave revealed your own capacity for devotion? Perhaps what you loved most about that relationship was not only who they were, perhaps it was who you became in moments when your heart was open. Perhaps they reminded you that you could be gentle, hopeful, caring, alive, and when they left, you mistakenly believed those qualities disappeared too. But they didn't. You simply stopped noticing them. The sunlight still exists even when clouds cover the sky, and the person you truly are still exists beneath heartbreak, beneath disappointment, beneath fear, beneath the stories you tell yourself about being unlovable or incomplete. That version of you is waiting patiently, not demanding perfection, not asking you to have all the answers, simply waiting for your attention, waiting for you to remember. Remember what made you laugh before your happiness depended on someone else's presence. Remember the hobbies you abandoned. Remember the dreams you placed on hold. Remember the friendships you neglected. Remember the parts of yourself you thought were too much. or not enough. Remember your curiosity, your creativity, your tenderness, your resilience. Remember the person who survived every difficult day that brought you here. There is a reason this lesson comes after so much grief, because once you stop chasing the version of another person who only exists in memory, you finally have the energy to rediscover yourself. And this rediscovery is sacred. It begins in small ways. You take yourself for a walk without checking your phone. You sit quietly with your thoughts instead of running from them. You cook your favorite meal. You revisit old passions. You read books that inspire you. You create routines that nourish your mind and body. You spend time with people who see you clearly. You begin asking yourself gentle questions. What do I enjoy? What matters to me? What kind of life feels meaningful? Who am I when nobody else's opinion is shaping my choices? Little by little, something shifts. You stop seeing yourself as someone who was abandoned. You begin seeing yourself as someone who is returning home. And perhaps this is what healing truly means. Not becoming someone new, but remembering who you have always been beneath all the fear. The person you have been searching for is not perfect. They still have wounds. They still have insecurities. They still have moments of doubt, but they are real. They are worthy. They are enough. You have spent so much time waiting for another person to choose you. So much time hoping someone would finally recognize your value. So much time believing that love had to arrive from outside. But what if the deepest form of love begins the moment you stop abandoning yourself? The moment you speak kindly to yourself. The moment you forgive yourself for what you didn't know. The moment you stop measuring your worth by who stayed and who left. The moment you realize that your value has never depended on another person's ability to see it. Because people will misunderstand you. Some will leave, some will choose different paths, but you remain. You are the one who has stayed through every heartbreak, every disappointment, every lonely night, every uncertain season. You carried yourself through moments you thought would destroy you. You kept breathing, you kept trying, you kept going. And maybe it is finally time to stop searching for home in other people. Maybe it is time to become a safe place for yourself, a place of compassion, a place of honesty, a place of acceptance, a place where you no longer have to earn your right to exist. Because the truth is, the person you have been searching for all this time has never been completely lost. They have been waiting beneath the noise, beneath the longing, beneath the grief, waiting for you to turn around and notice them, waiting for you to say, I remember you now. I haven't always treated you with kindness. I haven't always protected you. I haven't always listened to what you needed. But I am here now, and I am not leaving again. Perhaps that is the real ending to this story. Not getting them back, not rewriting the past, not finally receiving the apology you deserved, but finding your way back to yourself, because the person you miss exists only inside memory. But the person who has been quietly waiting for your love, the person who still needs your compassion, the person who deserves your loyalty, the person who deserves to be chosen, is you. And maybe the greatest love story of your life begins the moment you stop asking someone else to complete you and finally decide to come home to yourself. The day you accept what is, you become free. There comes a moment in every healing journey when you grow tired. Not tired of loving, not tired of caring, not even tired of remembering, but tired of fighting reality, tired of arguing with what has already happened, tired of replaying the same conversations in your mind, hoping they will somehow end differently, tired of carrying questions that have no answers, tired of waiting for the past to become something other than what it was. And perhaps that exhaustion is not a sign that you are giving up. Perhaps it is a sign that you are finally ready to let go. Because one of the deepest teachings in Buddhism is that suffering often begins when we resist reality. We suffer not only because painful things happen. We suffer because we keep saying, this shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't have changed. They shouldn't have left. I shouldn't have trusted them. I shouldn't have loved them. My life wasn't supposed to look like this. And every time we repeat those thoughts, we unknowingly go to war with life itself. Reality says, it happened, The mind says, it shouldn't have. Reality says, they left. The mind says, but they promised they wouldn't. Reality says, this chapter ended. The mind says, no, I refuse to accept it. And in that space between what is and what we wish had been, suffering takes root. Many people spend years living there, not fully in the past, not fully in the present. They exist in a painful in-between, 1 foot in reality, 1 foot in resistance. They wake up every day negotiating with memories. They imagine alternate endings. They replay moments over and over again. They search for explanations that will finally make everything make sense. They wait for apologies that may never come. They hope for closure from people who are no longer capable of giving it. And without realizing it, they place their lives on hold. They postpone joy. They postpone peace. They postpone living. All because some part of them still believes that if they refuse to accept what happened, they can somehow undo it. But acceptance is not surrender. Acceptance is not approval. Acceptance does not mean saying, what happened was fair. Acceptance does not mean pretending that betrayal didn't hurt. It does not mean pretending that grief is easy. It does not mean agreeing with the way life unfolded. Acceptance simply means looking at reality and saying, this is what happened. This is the truth. I cannot change it, and I no longer want to destroy myself trying. There is incredible courage in those words. Because accepting reality often feels like the death of hope. You think, if I accept this, it means they're really gone. If I accept this, it means the future I imagined isn't coming. If I accept this, it means I have to let go of the life I wanted. And that grief is real, because acceptance asks you to release not only the person, but also the dream, the imagined future, the story you built around them, the version of life you thought you would have. The children you imagined, the conversations you never got to have, the old version of yourself who believed things would turn out differently. Acceptance asks you to grieve all of it. And grief is sacred, because grief is love with nowhere to go. It is evidence that something mattered, that someone mattered, that you opened your heart in a world where nothing is guaranteed. Buddha never taught people to avoid grief. He taught them not to become imprisoned by it. He understood that life contains loss. People leave, bodies age, dreams change, relationships end. Nothing remains untouched by impermanence. And yet, within that truth, there is also freedom. Because if everything changes, then pain changes too. This sadness will not last forever. This longing will not last forever. This version of you is not permanent. The person who feels broken today will not be the same person 1 year from now. Healing will reshape you. Time will soften what once felt unbearable. New experiences will enter your life. New laughter, new people, new reasons to hope. But none of those things can arrive while your hands remain tightly closed around what no longer exists. Acceptance is opening your hands. It is saying, I loved, I lost, I hurt, and I survived. It is recognizing that your story did not end because one chapter closed. There is a beautiful image in Buddhism of leaves falling from a tree. The tree does not beg the leaves to stay. It does not accuse autumn of betrayal. It does not refuse the changing seasons. It lets go, not because letting go is easy, but because resisting the seasons does not stop them from changing. Life has seasons too. There are seasons of falling in love, seasons of joy, seasons of confusions, seasons of heartbreak, seasons of becoming. And perhaps the suffering you have been carrying comes from trying to make one season last forever. You wanted spring to remain, but life moved into autumn. You wanted certainty, but life offered change. You wanted permanence, but life offered impermanence. And none of this means that what you had was meaningless. In fact, the temporary nature of life is what makes it precious. The fact that moments end is what makes us treasure them. The fact that people cannot stay forever is what makes love so brave. You loved despite uncertainty. You cared despite risk. You gave your heart knowing there were no guarantees. That is not weakness. That is courage. But courage also means knowing when to release what can no longer be carried. Perhaps this is the final lesson hidden inside all of your pain. Not that you should stop loving, not that you should close your heart, but that you should stop fighting reality. Because reality is not your enemy, it is your teacher. Reality is saying, this relationship changed you, this heartbreak taught you, this chapter shaped you, but it is over, and there is still life ahead of you. Imagine how much energy you have spent resisting. Imagine how many nights you stayed awake replaying the same thoughts. Imagine how many tears came from asking questions that had no answers. Imagine how much of your present you sacrificed trying to change the past. Now imagine using that same energy differently. Imagine choosing yourself. Imagine building a life you no longer need to escape from. Imagine waking up without immediately reopening old wounds. Imagine laughing without guilt. Imagine allowing new experiences to touch your heart. Imagine trusting life again, not because nothing painful will ever happen, but because you finally know that you can survive what does. Acceptance is not the end of hope. It is the beginning of peace, because hope rooted in resistance says, I will be okay when reality changes. But hope rooted in wisdom says, I can be okay even if it doesn't. And maybe that is freedom. Not getting the ending you wanted, not receiving the apology you deserved, not rewriting the story, but standing in the middle of your imperfect, unpredictable life and saying, I accept what happened. I release what I cannot control. I honor what this taught me, and I choose to keep living, because the person you miss exists only inside memory. The version of life you wanted exists only in imagination. But you are real. This breath is real. This moment is real. The people who still love you are real. The dreams waiting to be discovered are real. The future standing quietly before you is real. And maybe the greatest act of wisdom is finally turning toward life instead of away from it. Maybe freedom begins the day you stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, now that it has happened, how do I want to live? Because acceptance does not erase your scars, it transforms them into wisdom. It does not remove your grief, it teaches you how to carry it gently. It does not take away your love, it teaches you where that love truly belongs. And one day, you will look back on this season of your life with tears in your eyes and peace in your heart, not because it didn't hurt, but because you finally stopped fighting what was already true. You stopped waiting for yesterday to return. You stopped searching for someone who no longer existed. And at last, after all the longing, all the resistance, and all the pain, you came home to the only place peace has ever lived. The present moment, and in that moment, you discovered something beautiful. You were never broken. You were simply learning how to let go. And the day you accepted what is, was the day you finally became free. Before we end this video, I want you to take a deep breath and think about the person you've been carrying inside your heart. The person you couldn't forget. The person you kept returning to in your thoughts. The person you convinced yourself you needed in order to feel whole again. Maybe for a long time, you believed that healing meant getting them back. Maybe you thought peace would only arrive if they apologized, if they changed, if they finally chose you, or if life somehow gave you another chance to rewrite the ending. But after everything we've talked about today, perhaps you can see something different. The person you miss still exists, but not in the way you once believed. They exist inside memories, inside old photographs, inside stories your mind returns to when it longs for comfort, and those memories deserve compassion. You don't have to hate them. You don't have to erase them. You don't have to pretend they meant nothing, because they did matter. The love you gave was real. The tears were real. The hope was real. The grief is real. And the version of you who loved with all their heart deserves kindness, not shame. But there is another truth that may be even more important. While you have been searching for someone who no longer exists, there has been someone quietly waiting for your attention. Someone who stayed through every sleepless night. Someone who carried you through every disappointment. Someone who survived the days you thought you wouldn't make it through. Someone who never truly left. You are still here. Your story is still unfolding. Your heart is still capable of healing. There are still people you haven't met, places you haven't seen, moments of laughter you haven't experienced, versions of yourself you haven't discovered, love you haven't imagined yet. This is not the end of your story. This is simply the chapter where you stop abandoning yourself for people who cannot stay. The chapter where you stop asking the past to become your future. The chapter where you stop searching outside for what has been waiting within you all along. So if tonight you are struggling to let go, please be gentle with yourself. You do not have to heal all at once. You do not have to stop missing them overnight. You only have to take one small step. Choose yourself today. Choose peace today. Choose to return to this moment, and maybe tomorrow, choose yourself again. One day you will wake up and realize that the pain that once consumed you has softened into wisdom. You will remember them without losing yourself. You will think of the past without wanting to live there. You will smile at the person you used to be and thank them for surviving. And you will understand that letting go was never about forgetting. It was about finally making room for your own life. If this message found you at the exact moment you needed it, let this be your reminder. You are not too broken to begin again. You are not too late to heal. You have not missed your chance at love, and you do not need someone who no longer exists to give your life meaning. The person you've been waiting to save you has been within you all along, and now it's time to choose them. It's time to choose you. If this video spoke to your heart, share in the comments, "I choose myself." Not because you no longer care about the past, but because you finally care about your future too. And if you're walking this path of healing with us, subscribe and become part of this community. Here, we don't run from pain, we transform it into wisdom. Until next time, take care of your heart. Be patient with your healing. And remember, sometimes the most important person you find after losing someone else is yourself.